Hi, everybody. I'm going to let people take a second to come on and join me here. I noticed that I had a big thing of plastic wrap behind me. It wasn't the prettiest thing, so we moved that. Let's see. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Give it a few moments for people to come on here. Can you guys send me a thumbs up if you can hear me okay? Hi, guys. Great. Okay, wonderful. Well, I'll give people a few more minutes to come on. If anybody who's here with me already wants to let me know where you're from. I see Cinda is coming from Central Oregon. That's awesome to see. Mystic, Connecticut, Michigan. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me on this Saturday. It's been a tough week, and I'm really happy to be here with you guys. Oh, look, you guys, my childhood bestie, Caitlin Seal Schwanke, which is an amazing name, is tuning in from Topeka. Hi, Caitlin. Miss you. Jay in LA, Dawn in LA. Do you guys know each other? No? Oh, probably not. Okay. Well, a couple of things before I get started here today. If you have to leave the live stream at any time, just a reminder that this is going to be on my YouTube channel later as well. But I sure hope you stick around because I've got some exciting stuff. As always, I'm going to be doing a Q&A sort of towards the end of today's broadcast. So if you've got any questions, you can throw them into the chat now. You can also throw them in a little bit closer to the Q&A, whatever you guys want. Of course, I'm coming to you from my kitchen in Kansas City, Missouri. I've got some banana bread behind me. I've got some English muffins on that tray behind me. I've been baking this morning. I'm getting ready to send someone a care package. We've got some friends from Houston, Southern PA. Okay, awesome. Well, I'm so happy to be with all of you. Hi, Truth on Fire from Greenville, South Carolina. Oh, just awesome. Okay, so a reminder that unusual with my live streams here, my amazing producer, Gabriella, is standing on hand in case I shout out any links or any videos or anything that we might need to reference. She's going to throw it in the chat so you guys can go ahead and click it. You can, save it for later, pull it up. And we've got people from Kansas City, Kansas, United Kingdom. Hi, Julia. Thanks for joining us. And Branson, Missouri. Awesome. Practically neighbors here. Okay, so before I get started here, I want to start out by saying I'm doing something a little new. If you have been following my social media channels closely, a few weeks ago, I did a call for stories on my social media page. Now, the reason that I did this is because as sort of post-pandemic, as I began to travel some and meet some of you lovely people in person, they would share these incredible stories with me, and they really touched me. Some of them were really special. And, some of them have even kind of changed my life, honestly. And it's been such a incredible byproduct of my career. And I feel so honored to get to share in people's stories like this. So I was trying to find a way to share this with you guys too. And so that's what we're going to try to do today. If you've been following me for a while, you'll know that I am a terribly nostalgic person. I am so nostalgic, I can become nostalgic for things that are definitely still around, that are definitely still here. An example of that is kind of old-fashioned radio shows. I happened to love certain shows when I was a kid. We lived in the country. We had to drive really, really far just to go from school to, anything. It was at least 30 minutes. We were listening to a lot of radio. And some of that radio, you know, even with the ads, even with kind of the things, I miss some of that. I miss some of that chatting like that. And I think for those of you who are fellow millennials slash NPR listeners, um, what we're gonna do a little bit today is somewhere between A Prairie Home Companion and Delilah. Does anyone remember Delilah? Delilah. Anyone? No? Well, Delilah. So this is a little bit different for me. I haven't done it exactly like this. So let me know how you guys are thinking and feeling about it as we go through. Leave me some comments, show me some love if you like it, because I really want to do a lot more of this. And we're going to start this off every single time with me telling a little bit of a story. Um, so I love to tell stories too. It's one of the reasons that I kind of collect these stories from all of you. And the story that I want to tell today is sort of about rain. Uh, if you know me in real life, you may know that I really love rain. Like, I'm the kind of person that when it is raining out, I get giddy, to the point that now pretty much everybody in my life thinks of me when it's raining. And on a rainy day, even if it's raining somewhere where I am not, my friends and family are saying, "Oh, it's raining here today, big thunderstorm here today." And I love rain. And I have a few memories involving cooking in the rain, many, many years apart. But that this year sort of I realized the similarities between these two beautiful moments. So the first moment is about my mom. My mom is an incredible cook and baker, and throughout my life has, thrown lots of holiday gatherings, family gatherings, all of these things for us. And of course, we all pitch in, we all help out. In fact, we have one of these family gatherings tomorrow. We call it the summer birthday party. So anyone from, mid-May to end of August, we're celebrating your birthday tomorrow. Um, so at one such gathering, this wasn't a particularly large one, but we had planned to grill chicken, and it started to rain. And I said to my mom, "Well, do you want to pivot? Should we cook the chicken? Should we roast it? Should we cook it inside?" And she said, "Oh, it's not raining that hard. I'll just go ahead and, I'll just go ahead and grill the chicken." So at a certain point, I peeked out the back kitchen door and I realized that she was holding this tiny, like child size umbrella, which actually was exactly enough to cover her and like the little area in which she was grilling. But it looked so funny because, an adult holding a child size thing is always a little bit funny. And uh, the rain is hitting the umbrella, pitter patter, and she's just grilling. I took a picture of it, and I just remembered thinking in the moment how sweet it was that, rain didn't stop her from wanting to do this thing, this nice thing for her family. And by the way, the chicken was delicious that day. But fast forward, that was many years ago. That was when I was still in college. I was home visiting. And then this spring, when I was in France on one of my trips with Reverie, if you guys aren't familiar with this, there's more information on my website, and you can link to their website, which is reverieforever.com. You can join me on one of these fantastic trips. We can meet in person on the other side of the ocean. Um, this year on the Reverie trip, there's typically a night that we call the grill party, and there's a big grill there, and they grill all kinds of things for us, and pretty much the whole meal comes off the grill. And of course, on the night of the grill party, on the night that it's planned, it's pouring rain. So as I saw, I'm gonna refer to the chefs as the boys, to be clear. The boys are, on the Reverie staff, it was predominantly women, but there were several boys in the kitchen. So even though they are real chefs, I, just sort of am gonna refer to them as the boys. So the boys were running in and out in the rain and, cooking really incredible top tier dishes for us. And The party was sort of starting, so people were bringing them wine, but they're outside and water is getting in their wine glasses. At one point, I went out by the pool and I got a pair of goggles and I brought them to one of the chefs because I thought it would just be funny. And he was like, actually, this is really helpful because he couldn't see very well. And long story short, I stood kind of in the doorway watching these 2 people, which mind you, I'd only met about 3 days before. I'd never met these people before. And I felt that same, like, sweet, proud moment that I felt watching my mom with her little tiny umbrella grilling for her family. And the parallels between these 2 experiences, I don't know, it's something I'm gonna remember for a really, really long time. And this evening ended up being the best night of the trip because we were sort of all stuck inside. It really bonded the group, and I don't know, it was a special evening. So, I just kind of wanted to tell that story today, a little bit, especially as we're starting to get to the end of summer. Soon we're gonna have rainy days. We're gonna have some crisper weather, and it's really a lot of fun for me lately. Been trying to notice these little moments in my life that bring joy, and maybe even kind of asking myself, like, what is it that brings me joy about this moment? And in this particular case, it was this parallel between brand new friends and my mom, and these very special meals that I got to partake in and participate in. Um, so yeah, that's my little story for today. And now I'm going to share with you guys some stories from some of our other flake friends, followers. All kinds of people contributed. In fact, so far, about 70 people have written to me to share a story. For those of you who have a story to tell, maybe today's going to spark something for you. I'd love for you to email me. There's an email button on my Instagram profile, or you can fill out the contact form on my website. And I'd love to hear from you. Any kind of story, they can be sweet, they can be salty or spicy. They can be, heartwarming. They could be sad. They could be happy or funny. Really, anything goes. What I'm trying to do is bring us all together and focus on some moments of joy, maybe celebrate some little things, some special memories, and so on and so forth. So, our first story today, a nice little short and sweet one from Nazreen in Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates. And I'm going to be visiting the United Arab Emirates for the first time this year in November. I'm so excited. I'm going to be making pie in the UAE, guys. So Nazreen writes, I saw your post on sharing a cooking memory and immediately remembered so many happy ones with my mama. When I was a toddler, if mama was in the kitchen cooking, I'd entertain myself by banging on pots and pans. As I got older, that simple play evolved into one of my most cherished memories, hosting a pretend cooking show with a spoon as my microphone. Mama was a chef, and she would narrate every step of the dish she was preparing, just like the guest on a real cooking show. I'm 38 now, and to this day, whenever I visit my mama, you can bet the pretend cooking show is still going strong. I particularly love this little story because I did the same thing. I had a little fake cooking show, except I didn't do it with my mom. I did it when my mom was away. I would do it when my mom was outside in the garden, and I would pretend, and I just loved to shake all the spices into the mortar and pestle and pretend like I was going to grind them all. Um, I want to actually also share that these stories are all in the own words of the people who wrote them. Occasionally, I have edited one line or something out to make it flow a little bit better for our chat. And all of these people, of course, I've asked their permission as well to share these with you all. Our next one is from Angie in El Paso, Illinois. She says, I work for a school district at the district office. We have about 40 to 45 employees in our building. We had a sweet lady who worked there at that time who was in her 80s. She never married, never had children. She had one brother who lived far away that came to visit her a few times a year. When her birthday came around, I asked her what special thing she was going to do to celebrate. She laughed at me and said, "Honey, no one has celebrated my birthday with me for years." She didn't say it to get sympathy or anything. It was simply stated as fact. The thought of anyone not having anyone to celebrate them just didn't sit well with me. So, this gave me the idea to start birthday treats. For the last 4 years, every single person who works in our building, I send them an email the week before asking them what they would like for their birthday. I ask if they want sweet, salty, healthy, or unhealthy, and then I bake them whatever they request. An email with the person's birthday and what the treat is goes out to everybody in the building, and I leave the treats at our front desk for everyone to enjoy. Now, every single person I work with gets celebrated on their birthday. My coworkers have come up with some really fun and interesting things to challenge me as a baker, and it's something everybody looks forward to, and it makes my heart so happy. I do this from the heart, and everything is baked with love. I've even been asked by several of my coworkers if I want help or money to put towards the treats, but I always say no. It just makes me happy. And I think probably all of us can really relate to this because that's one of the things I think all bakers have in common is we love to bake for other people. We love to bake. And frankly, it's honestly really fun for me as much as it is fun to bake for the people that I love. It's a lot of fun to bake for total strangers and kind of get them to fall in love with something maybe that they haven't even tried before. If you guys have anything to say about any of these, by the way, please hop in the chat. Don't be shy. Our next one is from Elena in Oregon. She said, this one is really good, you guys. This one, I'm not going to lie. This one might be a little bit of a tearjerker, but like happy tears, okay? Elena in Oregon says, I saw your story today, and just like so many of us, food is very central to my life. Between my mom's amazing cooking, my dad's love for preserving summer fruits and impossibly delicious jams, their beautiful farm garden, and sitting around to eat a huge lasagna dinner with my mother's large Italian family, you could say that food is in my blood. Cookies have always meant a lot to me in particular. They're one of the first things that I remember making with my dad. His favorite was ginger molasses. I would sit on the kitchen counter leaning over our ancient KitchenAid. Careful not to get my hair stuck in the mixer because Dad warned me that had happened to my older sister once and it was not pleasant. I would help crack eggs and carefully add flour, roll the cookies in sugar, and patiently watch them puff and bake through the oven door. Dad would always let me sneak some cookie dough, despite being a doctor and knowing very well the dangers of eating raw cookie dough. I loved making and eating cookies so much that my dad even started calling me Cookie, which is still my favorite nickname to this day. Fast forward to early on in my relationship with my now husband, Paul. We were just a couple of months into dating and very unsure of where things were going. I had just moved to Denver and was dipping my toe in the dating scene, and Paul was shortly going to leave Denver to move to North Carolina for 2 years to attend school. We were trying to soak in as much of this burgeoning relationship as we could before having the tough conversation of whether or not we would go long distance. We'd only been together for a couple of months. One weekend, Paul took me up into the mountains, which is my favorite place to be, and we went on a very tough hike. After plenty of heavy breathing and breaks all the way up, we sat at the summit, basking in our achievement and enjoying some cookies, of course. And we took in the view. At that moment, Paul shared with me one of his life philosophies that at any given point in time, someone, somewhere in the world, was making cookies. Unbeknownst to him, that's when I decided I wasn't going to let him get away. You guys, it's a love story. It's a cookie love story, and I can't. Fast forward 5 years to our wedding day. You guys, I'm getting, okay. I've even read this before. Why is this happening to me? Because cookies were important to both Paul and I, we opted out of cake entirely, and I spent the 3 months before our wedding making 11 different types of cookies, eventually totaling over 1,000 cookies that needed transportation and storage between my home in Oregon and the farm in Idaho where we'd get married. How did we choose the flavors, you might ask? Some were chosen because there are personal favorites, of course, and others were easy adaptations for different dietary restrictions of our guests. But the majority of the flavors were chosen because they were favorites of people who had passed away. Instead of the traditional in memory of table, we wanted to honor each of them with something sweet, with flavors that they loved or reminded us of them, including a ginger molasses cookie for my dad who passed away in 2015. I loved making each and every one of those cookies, and I can't help but feeling like cookies for me are the ultimate expression of love. Whenever I'm craving connection with loved ones or even myself sometimes, I turn to cookies like the warm hug that they are. The ooey gooey center of a delicious chocolate chip cookie is all I need to feel centered. Ever since my dad first called me Cookie, they're all I need to feel like I'm at home. You guys, such a sweet one. I thank you for sharing that with us, Elena. She also writes, P.S. I had a really rough week this week and I made your butterscotch crinkle cookies to lift my spirits. Absolutely delicious and just what I needed. And guys, if Cookie's saying they're good, you know they're good. So Gabriella, throw them that link. If you guys haven't made these, you need to make them. They're easy. You probably have everything in your pantry. Honestly, what are you doing? Start making them now. We're going to be here for another, a little bit. Start the cookies. Start the cookies. Okay. These last two are really nice and short, really sweet. This first one is from Kelly. Baking gave me a sense of normalcy in a childhood filled with dysfunction. While chaos swirled around me, I found comfort in cookbooks and baking guides. They were lifelines that offered structure, creativity, and peace. I was lucky. My sister's sister-in-law was our town librarian, and she always made sure I had access to plenty of books that became my escape and even my friends. My grandfather used to say that while we might not always have money to help others, we always have time, hands, and heart. And that's really stuck with me. Over the years, feeding friends, family, and strangers has become my love language. Recently, 4 friends and I baked 400 cookies for our local nursing home. We wanted to brighten someone's day. We didn't notify them ahead of time, but it worked. Their smiles said more than words ever could. For me, baking is more than just mixing ingredients. It's a way to work through just about anything. The hum of the mixer, the leveling of the flour, the scent of the vanilla. These small sensory rituals have a way of calming the storm. They don't just feed others, they heal me too. Ah, this resonates with me more than you guys know, and I'm going to share with y'all that soon I'm going to be launching kind of a new newsletter that's a little bit more writing heavy, and I'm actually going to share a story very similar to this about how my new book that's going to come out next year sort of saved me during a really tough time for those exact reasons. Whenever things were feeling kind of crazy or out of control, everything was under control in that book, like I knew exactly what everything was and where it was going and what we were doing. And anyway, our last one, short and sweet, from Lauren in Texas. My Granny Kelly observed a rule brought down by her husband, Papa Kelly. All desserts were to be sliced by first counting the number of people present at the table and dividing the dessert equally among them. If my sister and I were lucky enough to visit Granny alone, we would get a nice third of a pie to work on all weekend. I now observe and reinforce this rule among my own friends and family. I love that one so much, from Lauren. So a reminder, guys, if this sparked anything for you guys and you would like to send me a story, you can email me. You can fill out the contact form on my website, or you can find me on Instagram at emcdowell. There is an email button on my profile page. Okay, so with that said, we're going to launch right into our typical Q&A, okay? I'm going to scroll back up and read some of your questions from the very beginning, and feel free to start throwing some more in there as well. Bronx Born 79 says, my bagels come out sort of tough after I've boiled them. I bite into them and they're not chewy. What did I do wrong? Okay. So this could be a few different things, but my guess is actually just over baking them. Bagels are sort of funny because, unlike a lot of things, we're not always baking to get like a rich golden brown. You kind of want them to be a little softer to maintain that chew. If they get really brown and they start to get firm all over. They will sort of be a little more crunchy. I mean, crunchy is not quite the right word, but I know what you mean, not chewy. The other thing I'd recommend is make sure you are boiling them kind of for the right amount of time and at the right temperature. Because if you're just putting them in some kind of lukewarm water, that's not going to be enough to form the skin. If you don't leave them in long enough, they may not form that skin. So, just some things to consider with your bagels. Great question, though, because bagels are honestly really tricky. And honestly, if you live in the Bronx, though maybe you don't, you're just Bronx born. So, I don't know for sure. But I'm like, if you live in the Bronx, you just probably have good bagels. You should just go get them. That's like one of the things I miss the most about living in New York and New Jersey. The other thing is like subs. Kansas City has a couple places, but they are severely lacking in subs here. Okay. Kate B, who's got a number one crown by her name. So, Kate, thanks for being a fan. Thanks for watching Happy Baking. She says, struggling with apple pie, it's too gooey. And pie crust, best flour, pastry, brand, all purpose. I have trouble with it feeling like there's too much gluten. Okay, let's start with pie dough question. Typically I use all-purpose flour for my pie dough, but inside the book on pie, I have pie doughs that use all different kinds of flours. I've got whole wheat doughs, spelt doughs, like cheese doughs, doughs that are infused with spices or herbs. There's all kinds of things in there. So it's really about what kind of texture you want. For a classic pie crust, I'm typically using all purpose. Pastry is a great choice for pie dough because pastry is a lower protein content flour. Pastry flour is usually like 3 to 5% lower protein than all purpose flour is. So it will typically make a really nice tender dough. One thing that is a bit of a fallacy, fallacy is maybe too strong of a word, but I want people to stop worrying so much about developing gluten when they're mixing dough, because as long as you're resting it enough and you're chilling it sufficiently, any gluten that you do form should be able to relax sufficiently. So I would say, like, if you just take more time mixing your dough sometime than you usually do, just make sure to chill it a little longer. Make sure you give it a little bit more rest and relaxation time. Gluten isn't really a bad word with pie dough. The only reason we don't like gluten is that if the dough hasn't had enough time to relax, when we roll out the dough, it can shrink. And when we put it into the pie pan, it'll look like it fits, but then it shrinks because it hasn't rested, it hasn't relaxed. So that's really what we're worried about when it comes to gluten. And as long as your dough has rested a lot in the front end, you're going to be fine. The brand that I am typically using, I do use a lot of King Arthur flour. King Arthur flour is unbleached. And I do find that while my pie dough works with both bleached and unbleached flours, bleached flour seems to be a little bit more foolproof for folks at home. So if you are struggling with pie dough and you're trying to learn, I'm not saying you have to use unbleached forever, but I would recommend giving it a try. It really can make a difference. I've seen it happen for folks time and time again. The brand that I use the most if I'm looking for a bleached all-purpose flour is Gold Medal. For those of you who are local to Kansas City and Missouri, there's also a really nice brand called Hudson Cream. I bring it up. My mom uses this, and it's way cheaper than any of those big brands because it's made in Kansas, so it doesn't have to go as far. So typically in the grocery store, you'll find it at a much lower cost. Now, Kate, you mentioned that your apple pie is too gooey. I might need a follow-up question for that. So if you're still here, when you say gooey, do you mean like it won't hold a slice? Do you mean that it's like what do you mean by gooey? Because, gooey isn't really a bad adjective, so I want to make sure I understand what you mean by it. So throw in another comment, and when I get down to it, we'll talk apple pie. Okay, Pam says, what is the best way to make cinnamon rolls? Freeze to bake later. I never get good results thawing overnight and rising the next morning. They don't want to rise. Is there a better way? Okay. This is a little bit tricky, okay, because certain kinds of yeast and certain recipes that handle yeast in a certain way freeze better than others. So if you have done this with the same recipe over and over again, Pam, I would say it could be the type of yeast that you're using. You may just want to try a different recipe. All yeast should freeze okay. But one of the things that happens when we thaw it is it's still really cold because we typically thaw it in the refrigerator. So then it's still really, really cold. And in order for it to rise, it first has to get to room temperature and then it can start to proof or rise. So if you have any way that you can assist it in proofing when you have frozen it, whether you have like an actual proof box, I have this really cool countertop oven from Breville. I've talked about it on my channel before. Not sponsored. I just happen to really love this. It has all kinds of different settings. It's an air fryer. It has a dehydrate setting. You can make like apple chips in it and, dried orange slices and all kinds of things. And it has a proof setting, which you can set the exact temperature. It's pretty amazing. I use that a lot when the dough is cold. In my opinion, the best way to make cinnamon rolls ahead is not to freeze them, to just make them one day ahead, shape them, and then refrigerate them shaped. Leave them overnight. They'll rise a little bit in the refrigerator. You'll bring them out in the morning. They'll rise a bit more. And usually that works really, really great for me. And it still gives me the advantage to not have to wake up super early in the morning and be baking the cinnamon rolls all at once. Side note, there's an epic cinnamon roll recipe in my new book. I know that's still a long ways out, but it's really, really good. Okay. Laurel says, "Happy Saturday to all the sturdy pie peeps." What? um, I love this. Thank you guys for all these kind words and great questions. I'm just scrolling to find a couple more. AJ Jeffers says, "Hi from Vancouver, Washington. What are your thoughts about cake strips? Would you recommend them for a novice baker for level cakes?" Great question. For cake questions like this, I typically refer people to one of my friends and mentors, Rose Levy Berenbaum, author of The Cake Bible. It's called a Bible for a reason. There's a lot of information about there. Rose is a really big believer in the power of those cake strips, and I've used them because I've made a lot of her recipes. They do work. I think that they are especially helpful if you have a problematic oven. So if your oven is regularly, like if it has hot spots, if it has any kind of problems, if you find that recipes tend to take 5 to 10 minutes longer, or they're always done 5 minutes sooner, anything like that, where your oven is maybe a little bit wonky, um, that is a really great time to use cake strips because cakes are, kind of temperamental. They really want the right mixing technique. They want the right temperature of all the ingredients, or else the batter will break. So, I would say that especially for a novice baker, they are kind of a good choice. I also want to point out, though, that it is possible to write cake recipes that are just level from the get-go. One of those is my petit four recipe. It's in the Fearless Baker, totally flat cake. I developed it to be totally flat specifically so you had one less step when you're making petit fours, which is already kind of a complicated process. So certain types of cakes, this is easier than others. In general, if a cake batter is really, really liquid, it has a tendency to dome up more, in my experience. Examples are like sponge cakes. They typically form that little dome. But another thing I want to point out is for those of you who don't want to use cake strips, or even you just forget sometime, or maybe you order them and they don't come in time, anything like that, having to level your cakes isn't necessarily a mistake. I think most people are worried about it from a waste standpoint. And so I just encourage you to find creative ways to use those crumbs. One of my favorite things to do is just crumble them up, maybe even air dry them for a few hours and then freeze the crumbs. It's great mixed into your next ice cream that you make homemade. It's actually great in a crumble as you build a layer cake, like a flavor of crumble from another. Maybe you're making a chocolate cake, but you have this vanilla cake crumble that you had frozen. Great in ice cream cakes. Of course, you can make things like cake pops. There's really a lot of things that you can do. Another thing I like, if I have really big domes, I grind up all the cake crumbs and I press them around the outside of the cake, sort of Brooklyn blackout style cake style. So that's another thing you can do that, you're just decorating your cake with more cake. I kind of love that. Um, okay. Is there an L wants to know, is there an underrated bake or baking ingredient you wish people knew more about? Love you too, L. Um, let's see. Hmm. Well, honestly, this isn't a great I'll think of another answer as soon as I finish answering this, I'm sure. Oh, well, one ingredient that I do think is a little underrated, but it is kind of polarizing is Fiore di Sicilia. Are you guys familiar with that? It's an extract. Hold on, I'll type it into the chat so I'm spelling it for you guys because I probably butcher the pronunciation. So King Arthur sells it in their shop. I think I have it linked on my website in tools and ingredients as well. It is a blend of lemon oil, orange oil, and vanilla extract. That combination is really, really delicious and awesome. I would highly recommend trying it. Great in like a sugar cookie. It's great in a pound cake. It's great kind of all different ways. And I love it. That's kind of an underrated ingredient. But like I said, it is polarizing like some extracts are. You definitely need to use it kind of gently. You don't need to use too much of it to get a lot of impact. Um, and make sure you're using a good quality one that's not, like fake extracts. Uh, and then I think another thing lately, I've just been feeling like a lot of people, even people who like to make bread, shy away from certain bread things thinking that they're really difficult. Savory baking in particular, almost all of the bread recipes that are in there are really, really easy. And if anything, what's complex is like what they're filled with or what's on top. These English muffins that I make, I call them English-ish muffins because typically, when you make English muffins, you have to have an English muffin ring, and, it's just another piece of equipment. They're called English muffin rings because that's pretty much one of the only things you use them for, and it just keeps them perfectly circular. I guess you can also use them for crumpets, to be fair, but it keeps them perfectly circular, but there's no rule that says English muffins absolutely have to be circular, so I just skip that and cut them into, like, rectangles or, squares, and then, same thing, you just use kind of a fork to open them up. And I don't know, this is the kind of thing that I think people, we got some nice nooks and crannies there. This is the kind of thing that I think that people sometimes shy away from, but I made these, I'm going to freeze them now. So I'll have English muffins in the freezer for a while. They're so much better than any of the ones I could get at the store. And yeah, sometimes I think people should try more breads. And like I said, if you're looking for a place to start, savory baking has some really nice, easy things for you. Coaster Ninja says, "Do you have any recipes for no roll pie crust? I'm a pie beginner and I don't have much space right now where I live." Yes. Inside the book on pie, there are numerous press-in crusts. Wow, my pretzel clip. This is my pretzel clip, guys, and it is not doing the job of keeping my hair up today. We might have to just go hair down for a bit, which I never do. What? What? We're really friends now. Um, Okay. So yeah, there are some press-in pie crusts in the book on pie in chapter 1. I think I have one on my website. Also, there might be one on Food 52 if you're looking for it for free, if you don't have the book. These are cookie style crusts. Now, you can also make a crumb crust, which is also a very, very easy crust. But these homemade crusts that I'm talking about, they end up having a texture and consistency more like shortbread. Okay. So a nice little shortbread cookie crust, and you just press them in with your hands. They're very, very easy, very beginner friendly. They don't require as much chill time. They don't require pie weights to bake. There's a lot of great things about them. So check those out. Um, Truth on Fire says, tips on baking a strawberry pie. Should I macerate and then pre-cook the filling to avoid a watery mess? I want the filling to be thick and jammy. Okay, great question. So I have a recipe. At this point, it's kind of a famous recipe for my roasted strawberry pie. Roasting strawberries really, really concentrates the flavors. And because strawberries have those little seeds and they are naturally high in pectin, the syrup that forms around them becomes super thick and glossy. It's just glorious. Roasted strawberries are a great way to concentrate strawberry flavor and reduce moisture for anything that you want to be strawberry-y. It also makes them super vibrantly red. Gabriella can throw up the clip, the YouTube episode where I make roasted strawberries. If you haven't done it, you really should, even if you don't make a pie with them. If you use those to make a pie during the second bake, after roasting the strawberries and letting them cool, during the second bake, they evaporate even more. The pectin sets it even more. It literally, to me, tastes like pure strawberry jam in a crust, except much less sweeter than jam, much more strawberry forward, pure strawberry flavor. I think it is the best strawberry pie that exists in the world. Very few ingredients. It does take some time, but it's well worth it in my opinion. If you are not, that doesn't seem like the right fit, or if it's a million degrees where you live and you don't want to have your oven on for several hours to roast strawberries, then I would recommend maybe the berry filling in the stone fruit berry pie inside the book on pie. There, it's in chapter 3. That pie, you make 2 different fillings, one with any kind of stone fruit, cherries, nectarines, peaches, apricots, whatever you want, plums, and one with some kind of berry, blueberries, raspberries, blackberries, whatever. Strawberries are typically pretty juicy, but all berries are. So if you follow that recipe, it should give you a really nice guideline. Another recipe I'd recommend that you check out is the cinnamon plum pie inside the book on pie. I've talked about this recipe a lot. It's really great this time of year. It's like a really wonderful transitioning from summer into fall pie. And in that, I basically do make, again, lower sugar, but I make a jam. It's a very jammy, smooth consistency. So you could use that as a reference as well in terms of like how long you have to cook it, if you want to puree it, things like that. Um, okay, these are great questions, guys. Sarah Learns Portuguese says, thank you for including vegan modifications in some of your recipes. Would you consider adding more of these or even vegan recipes in the future? Thanks. Definitely. I like to give you guys variety whenever I can. If I'm being honest, that just is not my area of expertise. So I typically tend to lean into that when it's either something that I'm already knowledgeable about, or if it is something that's kind of easy to make vegan, that's something that that even as a non-expert I could do. Same sort of with gluten-free recipes. But I do enjoy doing it. I have people in my life who are plant-based, gluten-free, all kinds of things. So that's one of the reasons why I try to do it. And I'll definitely consider doing some more. Okay, yeah, Bronx Born lives in Atlanta. Should have known. Uh, Probably not as good of bagels down there. Rango Tango, which is an awesome name that I want to say 5 times. Rango Tango. Hi, Erin. I have a question regarding your pie crust recipe. If I build the pie and leave the pie in the fridge for more than 2 hours, will that develop enough gluten to make the crust tough? So you only develop gluten when you're mixing. As soon as the flour is hydrated, the process of forming gluten starts. So when we mix something like a bread dough that mixes for a long time, um, we're intentionally building gluten. With pie dough, it's okay if gluten forms, but we do want it to relax just so it doesn't spring out. The way you know if it's rested and relaxed enough is if you roll it out and it does not spring back on you. If it springs back, it probably needs some more time in the fridge. But yeah, leaving it, I typically, if whenever I can, I make my pie dough one day, and then I might even, if I'm doing like some folds, I'll do those the same day as well. But then I won't use the pie crust till the next day. I'll refrigerate it overnight, and that just always ensures that it's the best. Okay, so I've gotten back to Kate, who had asked about apple pie, and she says, yes, it's runny, it won't hold a slice. Oh, and she says that the cider makes it taste amazing. So you're using my pie recipe. So one thing is, in my pie recipe, I call for cosmic crisp apples. Crisp apples are extremely juicy. They are one of the juiciest apples that exist. They also have really incredible flavor. My recently, as I was preparing, I'm doing a holiday pie class. It's a virtual class that you can purchase from King Arthur, and I'm going to go film it in like a week in Vermont. And we're making a version of my apple pie in that class. And when they were testing it in their test kitchens, they were having some of the same problems. It's a little bit easier if you're struggling to use a either a blend of apples or to not use a pure full cosmic crisp. But the way that you do it with the Cosmic Crisp is you just need to make sure that you cook it long enough on the stove top. So, because my apple pie filling is thickened with flour, it's especially important to cook it for a while. Think about when you make a roux for a bechamel or something where you're thickening a savory item with flour. Um, you have to cook it for a while to gelatinize the starch, which will actually thicken it, and it also is gonna get rid of that floury flavor that we don't want to have. So, if your pie is runny, there's basically one of 2 things that's happening. You're not cooking it enough on the stove top, or you're not baking it enough in the oven. Or I guess there's a third thing actually, which is that you're not letting it cool completely before you slice it. So all pies should be cooled completely before they're sliced. If you are cooling it completely before slicing, then it's one of those other 2 things. You either need to add a few more minutes cooking it on the stove top, and or you need to add a little bit longer cooking it in the oven. The signs to know if it's thick enough on the stove top, it should form a thick sauce that if you run your finger down the spatula, it holds a line. There should be a nice thick sauce. It should be visibly bubbling, boiling. And same in the oven. You should see either steam coming out of the vents if it's a double crust pie, or ideally, if it's a single crust pie, you should see the filling visibly bubbling. And that's how you know, again, that it's reached that like point and it is ready to go. Oh, Truth on Fire also loves the Breville oven. It really is great. Um, Karen says, I have your book on pie. It's great. You offer some crust options for quiches, but what is your preferred crust for quiche Lorraine? My preferred crust for all quiche would be my standard all butter pie dough done extra flaky style. It's the one that's on my website. Gabriella will throw up the link for you guys. It's flaky, tender. There's just like nothing better with quiche custard. I honestly, you know, 80% of the time that's the crust I'm making. It's my crust. It's the best. Jilly Bean says, I accidentally blind baked a pie crust without pie weights in it. And unsurprisingly, it puffed up in the center and half of it slid down the pan. What can I do with this wonky pie shell? Ooh, this is fun. So again, I would encourage you, if you can still get filling in it, don't worry about it being imperfect. Cold set fillings work particularly well with kind of a wonky pie crust because they set really firm and sliceable. So even if your pie crust is kind of saggy, it could still work. But if it's really beyond repair where you can't get filling into it, I would say crumble it up. And again, use it as an inclusion. Maybe you make an apple pie cake and you crumble pie crust crunchies into the center. You put it into ice cream to make peach pie ice cream, things like that. And you can crumble it up and freeze it until you're ready to use it in some other creation. Um, Techno Bo Boy Joe. Oh, Techno Boy Joe. Sorry. It's like very easy to read. I don't know why that took me so long. When is the new book coming? It does not come out until next fall. I'm still in the editing stages of the book, but it has been fully photographed. And if you haven't heard this already through the grapevine, the new book has video components as well. So there'll be QR codes in the book where you can scan to watch me do certain techniques. And it is really, really cool. And I cannot wait. Peg has asked, what's a cake strip? These are things that you put, they make them in different ways. Sometimes they're fabric. Sometimes they're fabric and you're meant to soak them with liquid. Sometimes they're just silicone and it's just something that goes around your cake pan and insulates it in a way that helps the cake rise super level, notoriously creating a super flat top so you don't have to tort or level your cakes. Melly says, "Can't wait for the new book." I can't either, you guys. It's gonna be so good, and I am gonna be talking a little bit more about it and kind of the process of making it, like I said, in these upcoming newsletters that are gonna come out. I'm kind of gonna be sending out kind of more of like a bit of a personal life update of some of the things that have been going on with me for the last couple of years. And yeah, I mean, I'm emerging from a dark tunnel, you guys. So if you thought I was a happy Erin the last couple of years, get ready. It's about to get so much happier. Okay. When you make canelés, do you bake at 450 for 30 minutes and 400 for another 30? I used your recipe, but changed the time to 15 minutes and 30 minutes and used a carbon steel silicone pan. So, yes, canelés are very, very precise and require some very specific things. In order to work properly, the number one thing that they require is that the mold is hot or that the oven is super hot when they go in, because they basically start to really quickly set around the outside. And that's what helps to keep the inside softer and custardy-er. That said, that recipe that's in the Fearless Baker was specifically developed for silicone molds, and it is going to change dramatically if you are using a different material. So I see you say it's carbon steel silicone. Like mine are just kind of the standard, like pharmaceutical grade silicone, floppy. I'm not sure, but that is the correct amount of time. I mean, I still make them all the time, but they are going to really vary if you're trying to make them in the traditional copper molds. If you're trying to make them in any kind of metal mold, the timing is going to be different. So I would suggest looking at somebody else's recipe that uses that specific type of mold. I developed mine with the silicone mold specifically so you wouldn't have to do that beeswax coating part, which is kind of prohibitive for a lot of people. It's also one of the things that makes canelés canelés. So like if you want to go all out and do it the proper way, that is how you should do it. But that version in the Fearless Baker really, really is a solid imitation for um, for kind of classic canelés. Jess Olson says, "I'm having trouble proofing overnight for cinnamon rolls. I have no problem with room temp proofing, but I just cannot successfully overnight proof. Any troubleshooting tips?" Okay, yes. When your dough is in the refrigerator, it's not really proofing. In fact, in pastry school, we had these machines that were a combination proofer and also a refrigerator. And in the baking world, those are actually referred to, if they're used for dough and they're specific temperatures, they're referred to as a retarder because they slow down the yeast's fermentation. And so when we would load up the like refrigerator at night, we'd load it up with croissants. And then around midnight, it would switch from being a refrigerator to being a proof box. It would be 80 degrees in there now. They'd raise the temperature, and that's when they would stop proofing. Cinnamon rolls in particular, and any kind of enriched bread. So enriched means it has any of these ingredients in any quantity: sugar, milk, butter, eggs, oil. Anything that is like fat, sweetener, enrichment, those are enrichments. So there's enriched doughs and lean doughs. And lean doughs would be things like baguette, ciabatta, kind of your standard breads that don't sourdough, all of those things that are just flour, water, salt, that kind of stuff. So, so yes, when you're working with enriched breads, it's really important to remember that they take significantly longer to proof. And if you've put them in the refrigerator overnight, they have to come to room temperature before that proofing can begin. So, uh, you have to view your refrigerator. While it may rise a tiny bit in the fridge, it is actually really what you're doing is slowing down the fermentation when you put it in the fridge overnight. And then you kind of need to jumpstart it. So if you have a gas oven and you can turn it on to a really low temperature, like 150, and then turn it off for a few minutes until it's like around 80 to 90 degrees, and put your cold cinnamon rolls in there just to give them a jump start with that proof. Or like I said, I put them in my Breville and just set it to like 85 degrees. It works every time. But Jess, you're not alone in this because any enriched dough is going to be more difficult. And the more enriched it is, the more difficult it is. So, what is one of the things that takes the slowest to rise? Croissants. One of the others, brioche. These are so enriched and it takes much longer for them to get that activity. Um, okay, let's see here. Elena says, when you make your plum pie, I saw the jam on Instagram recently. Yes, I'm making some plum crumb for my friend Mark to send in the mail. What kind of plums do you use? We have lots of plum trees here, but not all of them get that rich purple color. The ones that I used this time were red plums. So they are sort of red skinned and red fleshed. So they do make a really beautiful purple. But even if you use black plums, which are black on the outside and white fleshed or kind of a yellowy flesh, they still become sort of purple once you cook them for a long time and puree them. So, but any kind of plums will work, any kind of plums you can cook with. Because that particular pie is pureed and made into like a reduced jam consistency, there's even less worries about what kind of fruit you're using. It'll just be about the proper cooking time. Oh yes, she Peg's mentioning that the quinoa crust is great as a quiche crust. I agree, nice and healthy. If you guys haven't seen that technique, I talked about that on Instagram last year. I have a full video on it on YouTube as well. Caitlin is asking about something at high altitude. Unfortunately, Caitlin, I don't have as much experience with this in any of the places that I've lived. I do have a friend who has some good experience with it though. And we've been talking about for a long time getting together and doing something about high altitude. Um, I don't think Evan is here, but Evan, if you are here, my friend Evan is, a great candy maker. If you have any suggestions for making caramel at high altitudes, Ev, if you're here, please don't gatekeep. Caitlin needs to know. And I'll try to look into that for you for real, Caitlin, because that's, anything, certain things don't struggle at altitude. And one of them is pie. It might take longer to bake, but because there's no leavening agents, you don't have to worry as much about some of those things. But for everybody talking about proofing being tough, proofing is really hard at altitude. Anything with boiling is hard at altitude. Yeah, that's tough. Wendy says, I own every one of your books and love them. So glad to see you on your own YouTube channel. Thanks, Wendy. For those of you who haven't, please like and subscribe. My channel is still a baby. 'Tis still young and growing, and I need all of your support. Oh yeah, Gabriella, thanks for reminding me. I totally forgot we're working on a cinnamon roll episode. Like I literally was writing that script just this week. Yeah, that's going to come out before the holidays this year. So you won't have to wait till next year for the book, though that cinnamon roll recipe is like it's heavy. Was there any time you had baking failures that you said I give up trying to make this recipe? Yeah. Yeah, there were several. I've told about some of these before in these Q&As. One of them oh, Evan is here. Okay, Evan, somebody needs help with making caramel at high altitude. Do you know anything about that? If so, please leave a comment down there for Caitlin. Caitlin is Kateelyn. She's Caitlin Thomas. If you want to scroll back and look at that. Yay, Evan to the rescue. Okay. I've given up baking on a number of things. I talked about this one before, but when I was doing the book on pie, I was trying so hard to make recipes from I was trying so hard to make recipes with fruits and vegetables that you wouldn't typically use in pie. And some of them were very, very successful. Like the roasted pineapple pie is delicious and really special, I think. But one of them that did not work so well was this disgusting cantaloupe pie that I made. It was so bad. And so I've talked about that one before. I don't think I've ever tried something. I might have said I give up with this recipe, but usually that doesn't mean I give up on the concept. It usually just means it needs more time. And I've sort of talked about this before too, which is that sometimes it takes me years to develop a single recipe, especially if the ingredient is seasonal. So, like, you guys know, I love Concord grapes. They start to come into season this time of year. Their season is very short. If I don't if I don't figure out a recipe with Concord grapes while they're in season, I'll miss out. Like, I won't be able to make, I'll have to wait till next year to get more. So sometimes recipes take me a really long time from that standpoint, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I'll give up entirely. It just means I might need to, reframe it a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and finish the questions that are up here right now. We're going to go just a little bit over 1 o'clock, but there's just a couple left, and I want to get to all of them. Thank you guys so much for asking so many great questions. Um, oh, let's see. I'm planning a tea time party for a small group of friends. If there's one or two must make desserts, what would you make? Okay, for a tea party, I feel like you want something like kind of pristine. If I was doing it, I would make like a loaf of milk bread to make tea sandwiches with. Like, I'd make a really, really good white bread and make classic tea sandwiches, cucumber, or even like cucumber and tomato, cream cheese, something like that. That would be so fun. There's also that Swedish sandwich cake is in Savory Baking. Those are really, really fun to make, and I think they're very delicious to eat as well. That would be a really fun thing at tea time, though a little bit more intense than just making tea sandwiches. And then I think cute little things that you can put, so that someone can really just have one little bite, or that you can put on a little tower. Madeleines would be so great, which are, like cakey, but the size of cookies. You could do them in so many flavors. One of my favorites is like a rosemary cornmeal Madeleine. Really, really good. Just a little bit of fresh rosemary in it. Use it making some cornmeal. I use a little honey in that recipe. Another thing that I actually think would be so good for a tea party is petit fours. They're cute, they're small, they're beautiful. Yeah, that's something I would suggest. CL Cordingly says, I made a chocolate pudding pie with your macaroon crust. It was delicious, but the crust stuck to the glass pan despite greasing it. Any tips? So, unfortunately, glass is my least favorite material for all baking pans, really, but especially pie pans. Um, it's okay, especially with that macaroon crust, to grease a little more generously. With pie dough, you don't typically want to grease your pans because there's so much fat in it. And if we grease it, it's already kind of prone to sliding down the sides of the pan. And if you grease it, you're literally giving it a slick surface for it to just slide right down. But with something like that macaroon crust, with my nut crust, with the quinoa crust, we need the nonstick spray, and you just maybe need to be a tiny bit more generous with it. I would take extra care to make sure that in the corner where the sides meet the base of the pie plate, that is well greased. That is typically where things get stuck. Um, Amy says, you said Evan like phone a friend on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. It's so true. And of course, Evan has come in with uh yeah, Kate, for sure. If you have more questions for Evan, I'll connect you separately, because altitude stuff is really tricky and I really want you to be helped. So go to my website or go to my Instagram at McDowell, and you can contact me there. So just a couple quick things before I say goodbye to you guys today. I have a Labor Day sale going on my website right now. Every single thing on the site is 25% off with code Labor Day 25, all caps. And that includes all of my virtual classes. And so the recordings of all of my previous virtual classes are all 25% off, and they're already not that expensive. So go in there and get yourself a class if you've been wanting to try that out. Get yourself some merch. I didn't wear my baker's bandana today, but that's my favorite piece of merch from the shop. And as always, I really appreciate all of your support. I want to remind you guys that I'm going to be sending out this life update soon. And so when I do that, I'm going to kind of be putting out a call to sign up for kind of a different set of newsletters. I send out a newsletter every month that's usually about what the virtual class is this month. some recipes that are appropriate for the month. But this other newsletter is going to be more like some writing, some more personal stuff about me. And a lot of you have been asking me a lot of questions the last couple of years, and I'm ready to finally answer some of them. So that's going to be coming in September. So hang in with me for a little while there. Elena, thank you so much for sharing your story. It made my day. I really appreciate all of the people. Kelly, Lauren, Elena, of course, who is here, Angie, and Nazreen, all the way from Abu Dhabi. Yes, Jilly, it's going to be I'll send out something to sign up for this into both my newsletter and on social media. I'll also put it on YouTube community. It'll be absolutely everywhere, if you're interested in that. And yeah, more stuff coming soon, more new episodes of Happy Baking coming very soon. So if you haven't already, please like and subscribe on my YouTube channel. It really means the most to me as we're trying to grow the channel. Thank you guys so much for joining me. This really was the highlight of my day. After a tough week, you guys always make me smile. These were awesome questions. And remember, if you ever have any more questions, you can reach out to me anytime using the contact form on my website. It takes me a little while to answer them sometimes, but I do my best to answer them all in the order they're received. I don't usually let a single email go without a reply. So until next time, everyone, I'd like to wish you all happy baking. Bye, guys. Happy weekend.